Let's be honest, if you keep wondering why women don't see you as the man they want, there's a reason. It's not because you're not good looking enough or rich enough. It's because your habits, your mindset, and your energy silently tell her you're not the man she can respect. Most men chase attraction but ignore the behaviors that destroy it. And until you fix this, it won't matter how hard you try. She'll keep losing interest before things even begin. When a man is always available, always ready to respond, always there the moment she calls, he unknowingly kills the very thing that creates attraction, tension. Attraction needs space to breathe. It needs curiosity, unpredictability, and a sense of mystery. When a man erases all of that by constantly showing up, he sends a silent message that says, "My world revolves around you." And while that might sound romantic, in reality, it makes him look unbalanced, like he has nothing else meaningful happening in his life. Women are drawn to men who have a life, a direction, a sense of purpose, and their own identity outside of her. When you make yourself too available, you communicate the opposite. You tell her that your time isn't valuable, that your attention is free, and that she doesn't need to earn it. People in general do not value what is easily given. This isn't manipulation, it's psychology. The harder something is to obtain, the more we value it. The easier it is, the quicker we take it for granted. Being available all the time also removes your boundaries. Boundaries are not about keeping people out. They're about showing that you respect yourself. When you drop everything for her, when you cancel your plans, when you reply instantly every time she texts, you think you're being caring. But what you're actually doing is teaching her that your priorities don't matter. And once she learns that, she subconsciously stops seeing you as a leader, as someone with structure, and starts viewing you as someone who can be easily swayed. There's another layer to this. When you're too available, you remove the chase. And the chase is not about games, it's about chemistry. Humans by nature are drawn to the thrill of discovery. When she already knows everything about you, when you're predictable, when you respond the same way every time, there's no emotional spark left to explore. You become safe, familiar, and eventually uninteresting. And that's not because you're boring, it's because you've made no space for mystery to exist. The problem is that most men confuse availability with loyalty. They think being loyal means being accessible 24/7. But loyalty is not about constant presence. It's about consistent intention. You can be loyal to someone while still maintaining your individuality. You can be committed without losing yourself in the process. When you forget this distinction, you start giving more than what's being asked, and you begin operating from a place of fear of losing her, fear of being replaced, fear of not being enough. And that fear is transparent. Women sense it. It shows up in how quickly you respond to her messages, how often you seek her approval, and how uncomfortable you feel when she pulls away slightly. Instead of respecting your space, she starts to test you, not out of cruelty, but curiosity. She wants to see if you're emotionally stable enough to hold your ground. When you fail that test by rushing in, apologizing, or over-explaining, she realizes that you're dependent on her attention to feel secure. That's when attraction fades. True confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to prove availability. It doesn't rush to fill silence. It's grounded, calm, and selective. A man with confidence knows that time apart builds value. He doesn't panic when communication slows down because he knows who he is without constant validation. That emotional distance is what allows a woman to feel desire, not because you're ignoring her, but because you're showing her that your life doesn't stop when she walks out of the room. Most men struggle with this balance. They either overgive and lose respect, or they withdraw completely and lose connection. The solution isn't to play games, it's to create healthy boundaries. Boundaries show that you respect your own time, your energy, and your goals. They communicate that you are present when you choose to be, not because you have nothing better to do. That's what transforms availability into value. When a man constantly seeks validation, he's operating from a place of emotional emptiness rather than confidence. He needs someone, often a woman, Charlie, to tell him he's good enough, attractive enough, or worthy enough before he can believe it himself. And the moment you depend on someone else to confirm your worth, you've already given away your power. Women don't respect a man who constantly looks to them for reassurance. They may feel sympathy for him, but sympathy is not attraction, and it's definitely not respect. Validation seeking usually starts quietly. It shows up in subtle habits, asking her if she's mad at you when she's just quiet, needing constant compliments, or over explaining yourself just to prove your intentions. You might not even realize it, but every time you do this, you're communicating insecurity. Instead of showing confidence, you're showing emotional dependence. And what's worse, you're placing her in a position of authority, as the one who gets to decide how valuable you feel about yourself. The truth is, validation feels good. It gives you a quick boost, like a hit of dopamine. But it never lasts. It's temporary because it's external. When your confidence is built on someone else's approval, it becomes fragile. The moment that person pulls away, criticizes you, or doesn't respond the way you hoped, your self-esteem collapses. You start overthinking, replaying conversations in your head, wondering what you did wrong and how to fix it. That's not confidence. That's emotional dependency disguised as care. Women can sense this dynamic immediately. They can feel when a man's energy shifts from grounded and self-assured to needy and approval-seeking. It's in his tone, his posture, and his words. Instead of being drawn to his presence, she starts to feel pressure, because now every interaction becomes about how she perceives him. And when a woman feels like she's responsible for managing a man's emotions, attraction turns into exhaustion. No woman wants to feel like she has to constantly reassure a man to keep him stable. What men often misunderstand is that respect and validation are not the same. Validation comes from someone else. Respect comes from within. Validation asks, "Do you think I'm good enough?" Respect declares, "I know I am." Validation is reactive. Respect is grounded. When you live for validation, you'll always adjust your behavior to please people. Saying what they want to hear, acting how they expect you to act, and suppressing your truth to avoid disapproval. It might keep you liked, but it will never make you respected. The need for validation also makes you easy to manipulate. People can sense when you crave approval, and they can use it to control you, compliment you when they need something, withdraw when they want you to chase, and criticize you to make you overcompensate. Without realizing it, you start living your life based on other people's reactions. That's a dangerous place to be, especially in relationships, because you lose your identity in the process. Women are attracted to men who validate themselves, men who are self-assured enough to stand alone, to disagree, and to set boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. Self-validation doesn't mean arrogance, it means stability. It's being able to say, "I know who I am," without needing anyone else to confirm it. That kind of energy creates safety and trust. A woman feels drawn to a man who doesn't crumble when challenged because his worth isn't tied to her opinion. When you stop seeking validation, you stop chasing approval and start attracting respect. You begin to move differently, slower, more deliberate, more grounded. You listen more than you speak. You don't need to explain yourself to be understood because your actions already communicate your confidence. And when someone compliments you, it's a bonus, not a requirement. Most men don't realize how deeply validation seeking runs in their behavior. It's in how quickly they respond to texts, how much they apologize, how afraid they are of silence or distance. It's not about being cold or detached. It's about being emotionally balanced. The moment you stop looking outward for confirmation, your energy shifts. You become calm, focused, and self-led. And that shift alone changes how women perceive you instantly. When a man lacks purpose or direction, it shows not just in what he does, but in how he carries himself. His words sound uncertain, his energy feels unstable, and his decisions seem reactive rather than intentional. A man without direction doesn't just lose focus, he loses presence. And presence is what women feel first. They can sense when a man knows where he's going and when he's simply drifting through life, hoping something or someone will give him meaning. Purpose is not just about career goals or money. It's about having a reason that drives you to get up in the morning, something that fuels your growth, challenges you, and keeps your spirit alive. When a man has no deeper mission, he starts seeking meaning through others. He begins to rely on relationships, attention, or external validation to feel significant. That's when he becomes emotionally needy, constantly searching for something to fill the emptiness he feels inside. And when that happens, women start to lose attraction, not because they want a man to be perfect, but because they can't respect a man who doesn't lead himself. A man without purpose is like a ship without a compass. He might move, but he doesn't move with direction. He reacts to the waves instead of navigating them. He lets circumstances define him instead of choosing his path. And in relationships, that kind of man often expects the woman to become his direction, to give him structure, motivation, and identity. That dynamic might work for a short time, but eventually it becomes emotionally draining. No woman wants to carry the emotional responsibility of leading a man who refuses to lead himself. When you lack purpose, your energy becomes inconsistent. Some days you feel motivated, other days you don't. You start projects and never finish them. You talk about dreams but don't follow through. You make promises but lose interest halfway. That inconsistency creates instability, and women associate instability with immaturity. They can't fully trust a man whose emotions and ambitions shift with the wind. It's not about success, it's about consistency. Even if you're still figuring things out, your commitment to your direction shows strength. Having purpose gives you identity. It tells the world and yourself what you stand for. It builds discipline, focus, and emotional balance. When you have something that matters more than instant gratification, you stop chasing temporary highs. You stop needing constant attention or validation because your fulfillment comes from your own progress. That's what makes a man magnetic. It's not how much he has, it's the energy he carries when he's deeply connected to what he's building. Women are drawn to that energy because it feels safe. A man with purpose doesn't panic when life gets hard. He adapts, he adjusts, he finds a way forward. That strength creates emotional security. She knows that no matter what happens, he won't collapse under pressure because his identity isn't tied to her mood or anyone else's approval. He has direction, and that direction grounds him. The absence of purpose, on the other hand, creates confusion. A man starts questioning everything, his worth, his place, his relationships. He feels lost, and that internal confusion leaks into every area of his life. He becomes reactive, impatient, and easily influenced by others. When a woman senses that, she starts to emotionally detach. Not because she doesn't care, but because she can't build with someone who doesn't know where he's going. Purpose also shapes how you carry yourself. It changes your tone, your discipline, your boundaries. When you're living with direction, you naturally start saying no to things that waste your time. You protect your energy, you make decisions with confidence, and you don't settle for mediocrity because you know what you're working toward. That kind of man doesn't need to chase respect. He earns it simply by existing with clarity. Every man's purpose looks different. It doesn't have to be something grand or world-changing. It can be simple. Mastering a craft, building something meaningful, growing mentally and spiritually. What matters is that it's yours, that you own it, pursue it, and let it shape your mindset. Because when you have purpose, you no longer chase people or approval. You attract alignment. You start to lead with conviction instead of confusion. And that shift changes how the world and every woman sees you. When a man avoids self-improvement, he stops evolving, and nothing kills attraction faster than stagnation. Growth is magnetic. It creates energy, ambition, and confidence. When a man neglects to work on himself, he sends a message that he's comfortable staying exactly where he is, no matter how limited or unfulfilled that space might be. And over time, that complacency becomes visible in how he looks, how he speaks, how he reacts, and how he carries himself. Self-improvement is not about being perfect. It's about showing consistent effort, a willingness to face your weaknesses, refine your mindset, and expand your capabilities. But many men resist that process because it requires accountability. It's easier to blame the world, bad luck, or other people than to admit that your life reflects your habits and decisions. Avoiding self-improvement often comes from fear of failure, fear of judgment, or fear of discomfort. But those fears create a man who survives instead of thrives, one who complains instead of creates. Women are deeply intuitive. They don't just listen to your words, they read your energy. When a man lacks the drive to grow, his energy feels heavy, unmotivated, repetitive, predictable. Conversations with him become dull because he talks about the same things, thinks in the same patterns, and never evolves emotionally or intellectually. A woman might care for him, but she cannot admire him, and without admiration, attraction begins to fade. A man who avoids self-improvement often struggles with self-respect. When you know you're not showing up as your best self, there's an internal frustration that never goes away. It manifests as irritability, insecurity, or apathy. You start comparing yourself to others, envying people who are progressing, and convincing yourself that their success is based on luck. That mindset traps you in victimhood. And no one is attracted to a victim. Women are drawn to men who take responsibility for their growth, not men who avoid it and then expect sympathy for the consequences. Physical appearance plays a role too, but not in the superficial way most people think. It's not about being the most attractive man in the room. It's about taking care of yourself because you value yourself. When you stop caring about your body, your health, or your presentation, it's a reflection of your inner state. Neglect on the outside mirrors neglect on the inside. A man who respects himself invests in his well-being, not to impress others, but because it strengthens his self-image and discipline. Self-improvement also includes emotional and mental growth. Learning how to regulate your emotions, control your reactions, and develop emotional intelligence are powerful traits. Many men never work on this aspect, and it costs them deeply in relationships. When you can't handle conflict calmly, when you shut down during emotional conversations, or when your ego drives every decision, you push people away. Growth means learning how to communicate effectively, listen with empathy, and lead with composure. That's the difference between being a boy and being a man. The world constantly changes, and if you're not growing with it, you're falling behind. The men who stand out are the ones who adapt, who read, learn, question, and evolve. They treat self-improvement as a lifestyle, not a temporary phase. They understand that every new skill, every lesson, and every challenge adds to their value. That kind of mindset builds confidence that doesn't rely on anyone's validation. It's quiet, grounded, and earned. When you avoid growth, you slowly lose touch with yourself. You stop dreaming, stop setting goals, stop believing that more is possible. Life becomes repetitive, work, distractions, temporary pleasures, and then frustration. And deep down, you know you're capable of more, but you silence that voice with excuses. That inner conflict eats away at your confidence, because no matter what you tell others, you can't lie to yourself about who you are becoming. Women are attracted to potential, but they stay for progress. If she sees that you're working on yourself, even if you're not where you want to be yet, she respects that effort. Effort is masculine. Effort shows direction. Avoiding self-improvement, on the other hand, makes you look lost, passive, and uninspired. And the truth is, no woman can truly connect with a man who's disconnected from his own growth. Self-improvement isn't a competition, it's a commitment. It's not about proving anything to anyone, it's about proving something to yourself. The man who grows becomes confident, independent, and emotionally balanced. The man who avoids it becomes stagnant, reactive, and dependent on others for fulfillment. Growth doesn't happen overnight. It happens in small, consistent choices. The decision to face yourself, to learn, and to rise one step higher than yesterday. When a man lacks standards, he becomes a follower in his own life. He accepts whatever is given to him, attention, treatment, or opportunities, without questioning whether they align with his values. A man without standards doesn't choose, he settles. And the moment you settle for less than what you deserve, you teach others how to treat you. In relationships, this becomes especially clear. When you tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, or emotional manipulation, you communicate that your self-worth is negotiable. And once that happens, attraction and respect begin to fade. Standards are not about arrogance or control, they're about self-respect. They define what you will and will not accept, not from others, but from yourself first. When a man doesn't have clear boundaries or expectations, he becomes easy to influence. He'll change his opinions to avoid conflict, compromise his values to please others, and stay in situations that drain his energy because he's afraid to be alone. That fear-based living makes him appear weak, not because he lacks strength, but because he refuses to use it. Women naturally test a man's standards, not to manipulate him, but to see if he truly believes in what he says. It's not about games, it's about trust. If you say you want respect but allow disrespect, your words lose meaning. If you claim to value honesty but tolerate lies, she knows you lack conviction. Every time you bend your boundaries to keep someone, you lose a piece of self-respect. And once self-respect is gone, attraction follows quickly. A woman might stay out of comfort or guilt, but she can't admire a man who doesn't stand for anything. Having standards doesn't mean being controlling or demanding. It means being selective. It means not entertaining behavior that disrespects your values, not chasing people who give you the bare minimum, and not allowing emotional inconsistency to dictate your peace. It's the ability to say, I deserve better than this, and walk away, not out of ego, but out of self-worth. Most men fear that walking away will make them lose people. But the truth is, walking away doesn't make you lose anyone worth keeping. It filters out those who never respected you in the first place. A man with standards is calm, not reactive. He doesn't argue for his value, he demonstrates it. He doesn't need to prove his worth through effort that isn't reciprocated. He invests where energy is mutual, where effort is returned, and where respect is present. That kind of discipline builds emotional strength. It teaches you to value quality over quantity in relationships, friendships, and even opportunities. And that mindset attracts the right people because it communicates certainty, not desperation. When you lack standards, you start confusing attention with affection and tolerance with loyalty. You think that staying in a relationship through constant disrespect means you're loyal, when in reality it means you're afraid of change. You start accepting behavior that you once swore you never would because you believe being alone is worse than being disrespected. That's not love, that's emotional dependency wrapped in fear, and women can sense that. They lose respect for the man who doesn't protect his self-worth. Standards also reflect how you treat yourself. If you say you want respect but disrespect yourself by staying lazy, unmotivated, or undisciplined, you're breaking your own boundaries. The standards you hold for yourself define the standards others will hold for you. When you hold yourself accountable, stay disciplined, and remain consistent, you naturally start expecting the same from others. You stop chasing people and start attracting those who operate at your level. That shift alone changes how others perceive you. Having standards doesn't make you difficult, it makes you distinct. It shows that you value your time, your energy, and your peace. You don't entertain drama because you know chaos has no place in a man with direction. You don't chase validation because you already validate yourself through your principles. You don't beg for effort because you lead by example. The more you hold to your standards, the more life aligns with them. Lacking standards is one of the silent ways men lose their power. You think you're being patient, understanding, or kind, but in reality, you're allowing people to cross lines they should never cross. Patience without boundaries becomes passivity. Understanding without discernment becomes self-betrayal. Kindness without standards becomes weakness. The moment you decide what you will and will not allow, everything changes. Not just how people treat you, but how you see yourself. A man with standards doesn't live by emotion, he lives by principle. His standards guide his decisions, his relationships, and his self-image. He knows that every choice either strengthens or weakens his integrity. He doesn't seek approval. He earns respect through consistency. Because once a man truly understands his value, he no longer negotiates it to fit into places that were never meant for him. Every man who feels unseen, undervalued, or unwanted must understand this. It's never just about how women see you. It's about how you see yourself. The patterns that push women away are reflections of the patterns that keep you disconnected from your own strength. When you're too available, you give away your time without value. When you seek validation, you hand over your confidence. When you lack purpose, you drift without direction. When you avoid growth, you become stagnant. When you're emotionally needy, you confuse love with dependency. And when you have no standards, you trade respect for temporary attention. Real attraction doesn't start with charm or appearance, it starts with alignment. The more grounded you become in who you are, the more effortlessly you attract the kind of energy that matches your level. Women are drawn to men who lead themselves first, men who have balance, clarity, and emotional control. Because a man who respects himself doesn't chase love, he invites it. He doesn't beg to be chosen. He becomes the kind of man who can't be ignored. The work begins with awareness. The moment you stop blaming others and start holding yourself accountable, everything begins to shift. You start moving differently, slower, more intentional, more confident. You stop operating from fear and start leading from strength. And when that happens, you no longer ask, why don't women want me? Because your energy, your presence, and your purpose already answer that question without you ever having to say a word.